Now in this edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked the question, what rating would you give Episode 4 A New Hope? I'll also be reading and responding to some of your comments, showing off some of the artwork and other things that were sent to me this week, as well as highlighting a few other YouTube channels towards the end of the video. But for now, let's take a look at the results of the poll, where we'll see that 59% of voters gave the original Star Wars film 5 stars, and another 35% gave it 4. That then left 5% of voters to give it 3 stars, 1% to give it 2, and a final 1% to give it just 1 star. Which means thanks to the way these percentages got rounded off, that all adds up to 101%. So for calculating purposes this week, I took one of the points away from the 3-star or middle rating, dropping it down to 4%, and giving us a total of 100. And when we do the math after all of that, we're left with an average score of 4.5 stars, which puts it comfortably in the lead, for the moment at least. Because if you're watching this now, it means the poll for The Empire Strikes Back is already up. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how these two stack up against each other. Anyway, just talking about the results of A New Hope for a moment here, I don't think they're all that surprising to anyone. Of course, this movie, the one that started it all, was going to fare very well in such a poll. In fact, there were a couple people in the comments who essentially asked me, what's the point? What kind of results did I expect to get out of asking Star Wars fans what they thought about the first Star Wars movie? Well, part of the idea or fun here is to just see how fans rate these movies based on whatever criteria they want to judge them on, and then seeing how those ratings then compare and contrast against each other. When it's all said and done here in a few weeks, I won't claim this is some sort of definitive or indisputable ranking of all the films that reflects the entire fandom. Though, as I have said before, from my perspective at least, there does seem to be a good blend of prequel and original trilogy fans here. Not that they're exclusively enjoying one or the other, only that that's the time period they got into Star Wars during. And as the results for last week's Rogue One poll all but proved, it scored a 3.78 and currently sits in 3rd place. The results for the Disney Star Wars movies, save perhaps The Last Jedi when we get to it, seem to be rather fair, or maybe slightly lower than what you might find if another very pro-Disney channel was conducting these polls. And if anything, what The Last Jedi score might ultimately be evidence of when we get to it, assuming it's as low as I think it might be, well, it really is just one movie that has utterly torn the fanbase apart. Anyway, I'm sure I'll talk way more about that when we do get to the poll and video for The Last Jedi. But for now, let's just talk about A New Hope. But before we do, let me quickly say thank you to everyone who voted and commented, and to everyone who sent in their artwork this week. By all means, please keep it coming, and send it to the email address listed in the description below. Okay, now let's get started, and as usual, we'll begin with the top-rated comment, which this week came to us from Darthzilla, who said, "Who's the crapbag that gave it 1 star?" And there were a lot of people that left a very similar comment to this one. And one thing I tried to do this week is really look for people who said they rated it low and gave fair criticisms of the film in order to not just turn this video into endless praise. Yes, there will be plenty of good things said about A New Hope in this video, don't worry about that, but I did want to look at this movie from all angles. And with that said, let's move on to this comment from Tom Radcliffe, who said, "I watched it with my family at the drive-in theater. I was captivated. The opening crawl, the giant ship coming into the camera view at the start, Darth Vader's first appearance, the hologram of Leia saying, 'Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope.' Luke first clicking on the lightsaber. That's no moon, it's a space station. May the Force be with you." It was a historic event. Number 2 box office movie all time, adjusted for inflation behind Gone with the Wind. We won't see a movie like it again. Which brings us to this comment from Knighthood02, who said, "The film that launched a new era of film." And this one from Elliot Barth, who said, "This movie literally redefined the movie industry when it came out." And the thing is, these are not overstatements. A New Hope really was a game changer for the entire film industry. It, along with Jaws, are usually the two films credited with ushering in the idea or the age of the summer blockbuster, which is still a thing today, obviously. It was also, at the time, completely revolutionary in the realm of visual effects. People had never seen anything even remotely like this before, and they wouldn't again until The Empire Strikes Back came out 3 years later, though that's not to say others wouldn't try to be the next Star Wars in that time period. But I highly doubt, especially nowadays where it feels like everything is either a remake or something based on other pre-existing material, and that there's just so many other options out there for people to be distracted by other forms of entertainment. Well, anyway, I highly doubt that another film will ever have the same impact on an entire generation or time period like Star Wars did. Okay, let's now move on to this comment from The Star Wars, who said, "In my opinion, it's the best Star Wars movie. I like very much Empire Strikes Back and Revenge of the Sith, but for me, this is the perfect fairy tale from space. It's simple and extremely rewatchable. Only if the duel between Vader and Obi-Wan would have been better." And it's funny what 40 years can do, because back then, a lot of people were blown away by two guys poking away at each other with laser swords. But by today's standards, it really doesn't hold up, and it's one of the biggest criticisms I see of this film. Because, let's be fair here, if you're someone who watches these movies in numerical order years later, and you go from Obi-Wan vs. Anakin in Revenge of the Sith to this in A New Hope, yeah, it's going to feel like a bit of a letdown. Nevertheless, if we put our context goggles on, this was actually pretty cool to see back in the day. Okay, next up we have this comment from Into the Ether, who said, "It's not Star Wars A New Hope, it's called Star Wars. I've always hated that since the day they did that. It's called Star Wars." And all I'll say in response to this is it's really only in videos that I call it Episode 4 or A New Hope, just so I can be clear which film I'm talking about, because outside of this, I usually just refer to the original three films as Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi. Okay, next up here we have this comment from For the Republic 1, who said, "Wonderful movie, but unfortunately it is harder for younger viewers to get into due to the dated effects and dialogue." Okay, so I'll give you that some of the dialogue feels a bit cheesy or is dated, but I honestly don't think the effects in it are really that bad, even by today's standards. Though sure, I might just be a little bit biased, and it's hard to put myself in the shoes of a kid watching it for the first time today, when I'm in my 40s and I've seen it probably around 100 times. Because no, A New Hope is not as flashy as any given Marvel movie today, or even other Star Wars movies. But I'd argue the use of practical effects in it tends to look better than a lot of the CGI we do see today. Or maybe I should say it just looks more seamless, since it's actually there and not just generated by a computer after the fact. For example, the space battle of Endor from over 35 years ago in Return of the Jedi still blows me away, and it's a lot better than a lot of other space combat scenes I see in movies today. Moving on, now we have this comment from NGP Dream Team 2K4, who said, "Overrated due to nostalgia. I gave it 4 stars. Good movie, but not as amazing as everyone says. Empire and Revenge of the Sith was way better." Then we have this comment from Super Surge, who said, "I mean, if we look at it through the eyes of the people who first saw it in the theaters, then it was probably the best movie ever made. But when I see it, I just feel like it is the fun and lighthearted one of the bunch. Not saying that it's bad, but it just doesn't resonate with me like Revenge of the Sith or Empire." That then brings us to this comment from Zach Wild 89, who said, "Arguably the bravest and most inventive of all the Star Wars films, as it introduced most of the franchise's fundamental concepts in a time where sci-fi films were considered B-movies at best. Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope gets a solid 5 stars. Despite being my least favorite of the original trilogy, it holds up to this day for its groundbreaking yet simple story, epic music, captivating visuals, and childlike creativity. The Force is strong with this one." And these 3 comments, and plenty other ones just like it that I obviously won't have time to get to, touch on some good points. That A New Hope is a fantastic movie for many reasons, but that taken out of context and judged by today's standards, well, maybe it's actually not the best of the Star Wars films. However, when you put all that context back into the mix, when you factor in things like the era in which it was made, back when sci-fi films had a very small following at best, and when special effects really weren't that special yet, this film is an incredible accomplishment on so many levels. And again, it paved the way for movies just like it, and of course, more Star Wars films as well. And when everything is considered and factored in, a really strong case could be made that this is the greatest film of all time. Okay, let's now get to just a couple more comments before wrapping this up, starting with this one from Noah Honstein, who said, "Ben Kenobi is the most underrated character in the story. The scene where him and Luke are talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi is chilling and magical. The music is amazing. Everything about this film is perfect. Yes, even the graininess and effects. The story, characters, and plot are timeless and can be enjoyed by anyone. Personally, my favorite of the series." Alright, next up we have this comment from Osseron Fair, who said, "No ifs, ands, or buts about it. A New Hope is a fantastic movie on pretty much every level. It may not be as deep as Empire, but a good movie doesn't necessarily have to be deep or complex. It simply has to be entertaining to watch, and in my case, hold up on subsequent viewings and remembrance." Then there's this comment from Rowan T Films, who said, "It's amazing how good this movie turned out with all the things going against it. I feel if it came out now, people would bash it. It came out at the perfect time. It was a breath of fresh air compared to the movies that came out at the time." Then there's this comment from Shark, who simply said, "Where can I vote 6 stars? One of the best movies of all time." And finally here we have this comment from Sethe on my Discord server who said, I would rate A New Hope as a 5. It was not only revolutionary, a word that gets thrown around too much but not in this case, but it manages to both be a fantastic standalone film, as well as a seamless part of a bigger story. The characters all had compelling and fantastic arcs, and Darth Vader was established as possibly the most intimidating villain in the history of film. Empire narrowly edges it out as the best Star Wars film, but A New Hope deserves a 5 of 5 as well. I wouldn't be surprised if a film as groundbreaking and as influential as A New Hope is never made again. And for better or worse, that's probably going to be the case, that a movie as influential to an entire generation and to the film industry itself is never going to be made again. And as contradictory as it is for me to say something like this, I think A New Hope in some ways is the greatest film of all time, yet in others it's not even the best Star Wars film, which just goes to show how fantastic this creation of George Lucas truly is. And it's now going to be ever so interesting to see how A New Hope stacks up against The Empire Strikes Back in next week's poll. But before you do go vote and comment on that poll, let me direct you to 2 other channels this week. First up we have A Game of Fantasy, who makes some awesome, I guess you could call them tribute style videos, and forgive me if I'm not describing them the right way or I'm using the wrong terminology. All I know is they were pretty damn awesome to see and you should go check them out. Also check out Rhodes Rant's channel, and he made a video discussing logo lovers, or the type of fan who just automatically likes something because of the name. Links to both channels or videos will be found in the comments below. Finally here, again, if you want your artwork highlighted or your cosplay or whatever it might be, or you just want a shout out for your channel, please send it to me at the email address in the description below. Just please keep in mind, especially with the video links or channels, that I've been getting quite a few of them. So if I don't use yours one week, you can certainly feel free to send it to me again. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to check out those other channels I mentioned, or to tell me what you thought about the results of this poll, or to go vote and comment on the one for The Empire Strikes Back. Either way, tell me what you think, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.